You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to it be Susan. You don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord, yeah, yeah.
Okay, welcome to New South Christians. This is your host, David Fuqua. I'm here with Annalise Roush, a member of the Middle College here at Vol State. I've actually got Annalise in macroeconomics right now. I also had her sister in macro, I think just macro.
You'd heard both.
Oh, both of them. Well, she left a good memory, though. She's an excellent student. So is Annalise. But anyway, I'm very excited to have her today. If this is your first time to the podcast, we're basically looking at Generation Z, particularly from a spiritual standpoint, how much they have caused such a change in what was the conservative, traditional Bible Belt, and then how that spiritual view has impact maybe the political or the politics of this state, along with the economics of it. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Annalise. Let her just introduce herself, then we'll dive right in. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Annalise Roush, 17 years old, in the middle college program. I've always imagined what I'm going to be doing with my life, and, you know, God's a big part of it.
Okay, awesome. Well, would you like to talk about your church or your spiritual perspective real quick, and then we'll go ahead and dive in with a few questions.
So I'm Catholic. I was raised Catholic, always been Catholic. I'm not the strongest believer in my faith. I would say I'm not hard Catholic, but I'm also not light. I do have a strong connection to my faith, and I wouldn't want to change my faith. My church isn't big. It's not small either. We have a high youth. We have a lot of youth in our church. Our church is very alive. It's, well, Catholic churches are usually viewed as very solemn, and I would say that our church does have a lot of body to it. It has a lot of heart in it. Okay. That a lot of people don't usually see in Catholic churches.
Now, your family's transplants, right?
Yes.
Where are you originally from?
New York.
Oh, well, those Yankees have come down south. Okay. All right. Well, a couple of things. We've kind of highlighted this before we got started, but we were talking about things like depression, suicide, and I mean, I hate to start off with such a negative, but it seems to be in every person I've interviewed, it's been true. Your generation is deemed the lonely one. They're also deemed as very impacted a huge percentage on anxiety, depression, and then manifesting itself in suicide.
Yes.
So I was hoping you'd kind of talk about that, maybe your personal experience. Is that true? Are those inflated numbers, or from your point of view?
I would say it's very real. As a elementary going into middle school, I wasn't having the best outlook on life. I was alone. I was eating my lunch in the bathrooms in 7th grade.
Oh my gosh.
I never attempted completely. What I would do is I would take a bunch of just random, like I would take tons of ibuprofen, and in my head I'd be like, well, if it hurts me, it hurts me. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Wow. I never ended up getting hurt. The only biggest thing that happened is I took a bunch of melatonin, which is to help induce sleep, and I slept for a full day. No one could wake me up.
Wow.
My parents were about to take me to the hospital when I did wake up, because I eventually woke up. But suicide's a big part of the culture now. It's a big part. Depression as well. All of my friends have had it. All of my friends, I've had one friend continuously attempt suicide. I've had a couple who have been to mental hospitals, stuff like that. It's also, it's serious, but it's also not, because a lot of my friends and I will joke about it. We're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hurt myself on this, I'm gonna do this, and it gets to the point where when someone does do it, you're kind of like, oh, they were serious.
Right.
It's so like taken down. It's so like normal that a lot of people don't realize. Yeah, people actually do feel this way. They are going through a lot, and them joking is usually them trying to say, hey, I need help. I need someone to pay attention. I need someone to look at me. And everyone else is, I wouldn't say everyone else is like, their issues are bigger than them, but they also have a lot of their own stuff. They'll be joking about it too. So then they're in their heads are like, I need help. I need someone to come and help me with this.
Well, do you think the church is doing positives to address this? Because what the statistics I looked at, like in high school, 1 in 5 know somebody who has attempted suicide, not planned it, but has. And then the number that have planned was really high. And then the actual number who commit suicide is at epidemic records.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how does your church, or do you think they are dealing with it?
I don't know how other churches deal with it. I'm not, like, I don't look into many other churches. My own church, the Catholic Church, our priest is very open. You can call him any time of day, sometimes even late into the night, and you can say, hey, I need to talk. I need someone to speak spiritually. And he'll be like, okay, you can come to the church. He lives very close by to the church, and you can go to his house if you need to. And he will be up and be like, here's how you can look at it spiritually. Here's how you can, be closer to God. We have this thing called adoration. The Catholic Church believes that Jesus is truly the Eucharist, which is a little tiny piece of bread that you get fed.
Okay.
And one thing you can do is you can go and be in the presence of God. They will take the Eucharist out and have it displayed, and you can just, it's kind of like even further and even closer to God than you would be by reading a Bible or in self-prayer.
Well, one other thing I wanted to hit on, like I said, I get all these kind of, I don't want to call them negatives, but more divisive issues, is your generation's view of things like the LGBTQI, gay marriage. The statistics show that your generation is much more tolerant of that.
Yeah.
Don't see that as a bad thing. If these two people are happy as far as that, I'm not going to impose my judgment on it. But how do you handle that as a believing Catholic?
So as a Catholic, I cannot condone it. I cannot say that it is right because it is against my faith, and I can ignore it. I have no problem if you get married as a gay, that's not affecting me. I cannot agree with it. I cannot say everyone should do it, but I can say I'm not going to have any issue with it.
Right.
If it was my kid, if it was my that's not. I would not cast them out. A lot of people do believe that Catholics are very cold-hearted in the fact that they cast aside gays. They call them horrible things. We say it's wrong because in our faith it is. We cannot deny that, but we also aren't going to persecute you or ridicule you or cast you out. One thing that, at least the way I interpret the Bible, at least the way I interpret this part of my faith, is that you can be gay. It's a possible thing. It's not, although it is a sin, it's kind of like if you are a glutton. As long as you never act on it, then it's okay. So you can live with someone of the same sex for the rest of your life, as long as you don't have sex and you don't get married. That is completely within the realm of my faith.
Okay, all right. And obviously abortion's probably straightforward,
yes,
right?
Abortion's very straightforward, nothing ever at all. Now, something that I personally believe, and some people, especially the women in my family as well, the morning after pill is actually a thing that conception can happen even a week after having sex. So morning after pill, especially in situations like rape, incest, those horrible, heinous situations that should never happen in the first place, although we cannot condone having that pregnancy and aborting the child, we, at least some people in my faith and I as well, we are kind of like, okay, morning after, the baby might not even be conceived yet. It makes sense to stop the process to prevent the actual killing of the baby later on.
Okay. Could you do something for me real quick? Because we talked about this at lunch before we came over here. Obviously, sometimes I ask the person sitting where you're sitting, do you believe in heaven and hell?
Yes.
And so I asked you that.
Yes.
So would you mind, not a real long answer because, it was very interesting though, but I'll be honest with you, I didn't understand. So would you mind explaining that? And I guess purgatory is where we're going.
Yes. So hell is eternal torment. It's where you go if you have a high amount of mortal sins.
Okay.
Mortal sins are things like murder, adultery, stuff like that, things that are very high. It's not like, you take a cookie from the cookie jar without asking. It's not stuff like that. Purgatory is kind of what I call a little pit stop before you get to heaven. You won't be going to hell. If you go to purgatory, there's no way for you to go to hell. It is just simply a way for you to continue cleaning your soul after death before you can get into heaven. So I always think of it as like a pit stop. You're washing yourself off, you're doing a little self-reflection, and then you may get into heaven. Your family members can pray for you in the mortal realm, and it will help you get through purgatory faster.
Right.
But and then heaven is forever being with God. It is being with your brothers and sisters, which would be everyone on earth, every age, every race, everything. There is I would think that there's probably a small sort of relationship, like you're being around, maybe you're closer to your family up in heaven, but everyone up in heaven is equal. Everyone is brothers and sisters under God.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. Hey, something else I wanted to ask you. I looked at all these statistics. There was like 1/3 of Gen Z claims to have no religion, all agnostic, or they call them nuns.
Yeah.
I kind of could believe there's a God or not believe there's a God, but don't acknowledge it or attend. A third go to church sporadically, and then a third attend. It's got, third.
Yeah.
But then there was a lot of other statistics that they don't trust religious institutions or religious leaders. Do you find that to be true? I guess that kind of surprised me.
My friend group, it was always funny being Catholic. I had a lot of LGBTQ friends. I didn't actually have a lot of religious friends. It was very interesting. A lot of them were atheist or non-conforming or non-believing, stuff like that. And what seemed to be the leading theme is they were LGBT or they had family members that were neglectful or stuff like that. And they kind of attributed that to God abandoning them.
Really?
Yes, a lot of them were like, he hasn't done anything for me. Why should I care for him? And I think that's a very
interesting.
poor way to look at it, because God is an all-knowing being. God has, crafted you from the very, ends of your toenail to the top of your hair. He does know you. He knows everything about you, but he also doesn't completely control you. Every human is born with free will. You make the choices that lead your life.
Right.
Is there going to be situations where you're like, why would this happen to me? Why am I in this situation? Why are my parents like this? Why am I like this? Why do I behave this way? It's not, I wouldn't say specifically contributed to him. It is also a lot about you yourself, and I think a lot of people who, or at least the ones that I've met, who are very anti-religion or non-religion, stuff like that, they have this sort of hatred for God in that he caused the problems in their life.
Wow. Man, that's pretty intense. Well, something else that we kind of talked about, and I probably didn't mention this to you, how do you feel being Catholic in the South? Because we're not heavily Catholic. This was, Nashville has a long history of how it evolved over time, history and, the river and the preachers. If you go downtown, the histories of the Ryman and everything are all steeped in gospel and praise and Jesus, etc. But I don't find a lot of strong Catholic roots. So how does it feel being Catholic in the New South?
It's hard.
Is it? Okay.
I've been called a member of a cult. I've been told to go off myself by people close to me because they learned I was Catholic. I avoid the subject. Now, I am a proud Catholic. I enjoy being Catholic. I love my faith. But I don't mention it because I don't like being told things in that sense just because I have a specific religious affiliation. Same with my political views. I don't tell many people my political views because I don't want to get in with that on people, because every time I do, it leads to stuff going on and people talking. I don't want that. I want you to know me as me, not based on my religion, not based on my political views.
Right.
So I'd say it's hard. I came down here knowing I was only 8 or 9 when I came down here, but I knew that this was a very heavily religious area, which I thought was cool.
Oh, yes. This is in the South. We're well known for, hi, my name's David Fuqua. Do you know Jesus?
Yes. Yes.
My friends in Massachusetts, that's considered very personal. That would be rude to do that. Here, it's like we breathe. Yeah.
And I learned very quickly that it's not very open to Catholic religion. A lot of people down here don't like it. They don't, they don't vibe with it, as to be a more modern way to say it. And it's a little hard because even people who are religious, I find it hard to connect with them because I'm very different in being Catholic. We have a lot of differences in opinions and religion, stuff like that.
Well, something else we talked about, which I think we could kind of branch off, is obviously we've had a massive influx of people from south of the border, primarily Mexico, but true Guatemala, El Salvador, Venezuela, Colombia. So just use that all-encompassing Hispanic, which are predominantly Catholic.
Oh, yeah.
And we even talked about when you look at some of these churches now where the Hispanics predominantly meet in Catholicism, they're packed,
Oh yeah.
overflowing. And I think we've kind of stereotyped them. Are they all conservatives? Are they all, because a lot of times we like to say they vote Democratic. So they're okay with abortion, they're okay with gay marriage, they're okay with this. But then I go deeper reading stuff, and that's not true at all, that they truly are very conservative. So does your church interact with predominantly Hispanic, or is it a segregated Catholicism that we see in Nashville?
It's not segregated at all.
Okay.
We have a very diverse, at least in my church, which is always funny because I'm like, it's South, but we have all these sorts of, we've got a lot of different races, a lot of different
Okay.
ethnicities, stuff like that. So we actually have a small Korean population that come to our church.
Really?
Yep, we have a small, we have a smaller amount of Black Americans that come to our church. Our church, Black Americans are usually more predominantly Baptist or
Sure.
non-denominational stuff like that. So it is a very high white population. But man, do Hispanic masses pack the church. I had to go to a Hispanic mass. Not had to, like I was forced. It was, I had to go at night, which was usually more predominantly Spanish time. And I walk in and there's nowhere for me to sit. It's not big, but we have a large church.
Right.
So there's always seats. There was no seats. And I'm looking at these, and it's nice to see families.
Right.
Because a lot of people, especially during the time that I go to church early morning, it's usually the older, it's usually, the mom and dad. Sometimes the siblings will be there, like the children will be there, but usually they've already gone off to do their own thing in life. But Spanish masses are always just huge. And they're very nice people.
Now, are they in the native language or?
Yes.
Okay.
Our pastor, I say pastor, we call him priests.
Okay.
I know down here it's, or father. We will
Okay.
call our priest father. So father is making the effort to learn Spanish, but we do have a Spanish-speaking priest.
Okay. I figured you probably did. Hey, a couple other things in here. We were talking a little bit before we get started. Do you believe life's it's not gonna get any better? Because we talked about suicide, we talked about anxiety some and depression, but it's this idea of looking forward. You don't think things are gonna get better. Is that true? I guess I'm thinking more optimistic, but should you be excited?
I think for a lot of people, I am currently going through a time in my life where I'm not doing the best. I'm on a bunch of different anxiety.
Okay.
I just got diagnosed as being bipolar. So
okay.
I'm going through a spot in my life where I'm like, ooh, I'm a little worried about everything. I've lost a lot of motivation, stuff like that. And it kind of has become, I look at the future like, I don't know. Am I going to make it there? Am I going to enjoy what I do in that time? And I think a lot of it has just come from the way the world has changed. And kind of losing part of my religion. Like I said, I'm not the highest practicing Catholic. I do strongly believe in my religion, but I've kind of been drifting away a little bit as my life gets harder.
Well, what about those statistics that I shared with you, or the results on the survey, that you don't trust current religious leaders? I mean, their positive rating, if you want to just use a phrase for it, was not good at all. The institution was not good. Where does that come from? I mean, I'm not a practicing Catholic. I've been to the Catholic Church before, but I've always felt positive feelings from the service, even though I maybe don't share the, going to confession and some of the other stuff. But I don't know. Where's that come from?
It's very typical. Old white guys, creepy.
Oh, my God,
A lot of Catholic pastors are middle-aged to older white men.
Okay.
And I have never personally had a bad experience with my priest. I enjoy talking with my priest. I think he's a very nice guy. I've had 4 different priests. And even in New York, we had a prison preacher. So he would come and do our service and then go over to the jail and do services for those in there. But I think a lot of it comes from the stereotypical old white guy is weird, old white guy is creepy. So I think, because like I said, it's a lot, because you have to be in seminary and school until I think like your early 30s. It's
Really?
a lot of school, a lot of money. And so you don't really see young priests because there aren't any.
Yeah, but they also, one of these other statistics was 42% of your generation feel down, hopeless, and depressed, on top of you don't think it's going to get any better. And so who's going to solve the problems then? Because we talked a little bit. Does your generation believe that government can be part of the solution? Because we're getting ready to have a presidential election. There's going to be a huge argument between, big government's bad, or big government's good. You're in economics with me. We know we're at, 32 trillion and counting debt.
Yep.
So, in this kind of anxious, depressed, not going to get better mode, how do you feel about the government? How do you feel? I mean, are you optimistic about this election coming up, or do you? I mean, your generation can make a huge difference in the outcome.
Oh, yeah. I'm worried. I fear that if whatever president we get, I fear that if they continue down the path that our current, I don't really like our current president, is going, it's not going to be good. I also think that a lot of the mistrust in government comes from the fact that they are untrustworthy. A lot of the things, especially lately in the past 20 or so years that have been going on in government, it's a lot of pushing stuff under the rug. It's a lot of, what exactly is going on? Are you overstepping your boundaries? Stuff like that. I do think government definitely has a place in the world, especially in a large country like this, a large prosperous country like this.
Sure.
But I don't think the amount of control and the amount of power they have now is what they should have. I think they should have less.
Oh, interesting. Well, what about as far as the environment? They always say that Gen Z cares about the environment.
Yes.
Is that true or not? I mean, like global warming, is it a myth? Is it real? What do you see your generation doing about that?
I think our generation is very concerned about global warming, about economics, about environmental things. I think global warming is real. I'm not sure exactly how much of an effect we can have on stopping it, because I've looked into what's shown as just we do have an effect on the world. I would say that we do have an effect on global warming, stuff like that. I don't know personally if I would consider it one of the major things I'm worried about.
Okay.
Because it's like you push it off into the future, do it another day. But at the moment, we are having problems in our country and with our environment that I think trump that concern, at least for me at the moment.
Right, I understand.
But as far as environmentally, I think pollution is definitely a big issue. We call things recyclable, we call things this, it's not. We have so much landfill, we have so much things polluting our waters and stuff like that. I think that is an issue that we can actually tackle, an issue that we can make a dent on before we can make a dent on global warming, stuff like that. Also, I think Gen Z is shooting themselves in the foot. I think in Europe right now is those climate activists.
Right.
Everyone hates you. No one likes you. You are making a bigger problem for yourself, because now people are going I want to not support you more because you are making all these issues, like throwing, I think, paint on paintings or gluing yourself to asphalt that might end with your hand being amputated. Yeah. That's not going to help your cause. It's making you seem immature and
maybe unhinged.
Really, yes. So I think in that sense, I think they're a little too and so hyper fixated, so upped on it. I think you need to be more of a scale back a little bit, really look at it and what you can do.
Sure.
You can raise awareness without being like that and having people hate you.
That's a good point. Okay, a couple more things before we wrap up. I hate to use this phrase, but social justice is one of the things that we talk about all the time in this society. People have seen plenty of videos, police brutality, the George Floyd, and the reactions to it. Your generation's more racially diverse than any other. You're the most educated. The percentage of you in college is a record. So you're dealing with a kind of a different group there. And they want to be active. They don't want to just talk about problems. They want to act on them. So when you look at, issues like social justice in the backdrop of all that, do you feel more positive about the future, what you can do other than glue yourself to asphalt and possibly lose a hand?
I'm not a social justice warrior.
Oh, okay.
Because I have a lot of issue with how that they sometimes address things. I don't agree with how a lot of them view the issue of race.
Okay.
So I do think that racism is definitely an issue. It's still very prevalent. That's to be known. Like everyone knows that. But I also don't think that condemning every white person to say that they're racist, which is what I've had told to me, which is what my family's had told to
Right.
them. Being black is not something you control, but being white is also not something that you can control.
Good point.
And a lot of people seem to woo, they kind of miss that part. It's like you can't control being born black. I can't control being born white.
Yeah.
And I kind of have issue because it seems that in trying to fight for the rights that all black people should have, which they should,
Right.
I never disagree with that. They kind of push down onto white people, kind of like, you guys are the cause of this. They're trying to find someone to blame. Is
Right.
kind of what I'm trying
Right.
to say. And it should be like, yes, there have been issues in the past. Yes, there are still issues now. But to have us be on your side and to fight with you, you can't demonize all of
Okay.
us.
All right.
So,
Well, I want to always like to end on a positive note. So I'm
Yeah.
going to do two things. One, since I had your sister in class doing accounting, looks like she's going to get a great internship.
oh, yeah.
Going to go from undergraduate to graduate. So obviously life's looking pretty good. You're going to do finance as long as you stay on the path.
International business is what I'm going to shoot for.
Oh,
actually.
okay. So from the economy point of view, I mean, we mentioned 32 trillion in debt. Well,
Oh, yeah.
that's the government. But as far as you and your future financially, how do you see your generation making its way through the economy? Do you feel positive about that?
No.
Jeez. Okay. I'm trying to end on a good note here.
well,
but
you asked the wrong
don't
question.
lie. Just tell the truth. Go for it.
Okay. I think that my generation's very lazy, and I
Okay.
think that my generation is very spendy.
Okay.
So we are very prone to pleasure now, very prone to I just want to, sit and do what I want. I don't want to have to worry about anything. So I think that economy-wise, we're not doing too good on, hey, let's focus on money. Hey, let's, not just sit on our butts all day. And I think that it's probably going to not do too good with the economy.
Okay. All right. Well, then let me try another maybe positive, I guess. Tell me, to my generation, I'm an old baby boomer. Right? So how do we get your generation into church? Tear down the walls of least trust, nuns, et cetera. Because, I mean, I guess for me spiritually, that seems like a huge group of people adrift.
Yeah.
So if you were advising me and say I was a pastor of a church, how do I get these people in the door?
I think you should delegate the task more to the younger members of your congregation. I am Catholic. Not a lot of people want to be Catholic. I've mentioned it to people, especially those who have just now found that they want to be in God's presence. I've been like, hey, I'm Catholic. If you would like to try going to my church, I would love to take you. I'd love
Sure.
to tell you about it. But I also don't be pushy. I don't be like, yeah, you got to be Catholic. You got to do all these things. I think that's something where some churches go wrong because they immediately go, this is all the rules. This is all the things you have to follow. This is the only way you get to heaven. You got to go slow. You got to be like, okay, this is, how you
Right.
can speak to the Lord. This is how the Lord can help you. This is how you can change your life by being with him.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of churches kind of miss that point. But I
Well,
think
you know what's funny, like doing this show, one of the things that's popped out at me, and I've worked for decades with your generation, it's the idea that you prefer in person and you like very direct conversation.
Oh,
We
yeah.
always like to kind of stereotype you as you're the people, 95% of your generation has smartphones. Well, they're over there with tech. That's the only way you can talk to them. They don't want to answer email, but if you'll text them. But then when I read the surveys and the results asking your generation, they want a face-to-face conversation. They want a deep conversation.
Yeah.
They're not looking for a surface conversation. And I just thought, well, that kind of jumped out at me. So you're saying that's what we need to do to get these people in the door.
yeah, I
Okay.
think don't scare them away. Don't be
Okay.
too much too fast, but
Okay.
be honest with them. Tell them
Okay.
about what's going to happen and how they can better help themselves.
Well, then let's end this on a really good note. So what do you like about being Gen Z? What do you think your generation's positives are? I mean, what do you tell, let's say you have kids that are, Mom, this is the generation of you. What, man, you guys were great. This is what you were great. I don't know, whatever you want to say. Just fill in the blank.
I think we are smart. I think we have good morals, and at least, if nothing else, our heart's in the right places. We're trying to make the world better.
Yeah.
We fail often, but we are in the set of, I want to make the world better. I want to help people. So I think that our generation is at least trying to be very charitable, trying to be very, with people and, stuff like that. So I think our generation is very people.
All right. Well, Annalise Rouse, it was great to have you. I really enjoyed it. This has been one of my favorite things this semester. I wish I'd found this a long time ago, but you were fantastic.
Thank you.
So anyway, thanks for being on.
Of course.
Okay.